Hi everyone, I'm here again, your tutor for science, Mr. Quresh. We are continuing with our lessons on health and hygiene. Just a quick recap. The units we looked at include community health, communicable and non-communicable diseases. So far we have looked at health. We gave a definition of health as being, not just the absence of disease, but being completely well in terms of your physical, your mental, and the social well-being. We also looked at hygiene, which talks about all the practices we put in place in terms of being clean and eating right and all the good things that will keep us healthy. We made a review of the grade 7 and grade 8 work. And then we looked at diseases and the types of diseases or the classification of diseases in terms of them being endemic, meaning it's in a locality, epidemic, sudden outbreak of diseases, pandemic, sudden outbreak, but this one extends to large areas and many countries. And we also looked at sporadic. These are diseases that frequently come and go. They attack us, but they don't give us much trouble, like common cold. We further on looked at health problems and the problems associated with health. These include unhygienic disposal of waste, be they solid waste, be they liquid waste, or other waste that we have in the environment. It could be waste that is coming from the air. We also looked at sale of foodstuff in unhygienic conditions. We looked at unsafe drinking water, poorly ventilated houses, bad lifestyles like smoking and drinking alcohol, and the problems associated with all these things I've just listed. We then moved on to ways to solve community health problems. Cleaning at the individual level, cleaning at the community level, the role of our municipalities in collecting our waste and making sure food and water are safe, promoting awareness through education. We also went on to look at disease and disease-causing organisms. We classified them into communicable and non-communicable diseases. We stopped at notes on some diseases, including coronavirus or COVID-19. So here's a quick question for us to look at. Hopefully you've been studying the last notes we gave you. The question says, which of the following is a non-communicable disease? Let me repeat that question. Which of the following is a non-communicable disease? Is it measles, anemia, meningitis, or gonorrhea? I'll give you a few seconds to see if you can come up with the right answer. So remember, non-communicable means it's disease that is not caused by organism, and so we cannot pass them from person to person. So measles, of course, is caused by a pathogen. Anemia, let's look at anemia. What is anemia? It is when usually an individual is suffering from a condition in which the red blood cells are low, or commonly we say the person has low blood condition. What about meningitis? That is also caused by a pathogen, and gonorrhea, the same thing. So the right answer there, if you chose anemia, B, that's the correct answer. Let's move on. Which of the following is a waterborne disease? Is it tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, cholera, or measles? All right. Go through your answers. Tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, cholera, measles. Which is a waterborne disease? That means we get it being transmitted through water. That the right answer there should be cholera. The act of isolating a person with an infectious disease is known as incubation, inoculation, quarantine, convalescence. So which do you think is the right answer when you isolate a person that has an infectious disease? Now remember, we said infectious disease, these are diseases that can be transmitted from person to person. They go through certain media, either water, the food we drink, the air, or it could be some organisms. So which of these, when you isolate a person, when you isolate a person with an infectious disease, what is that known as? All right, if you choose quarantine, that's the right answer. Today, we shall continue looking at more diseases. The first one is HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. This is a virus that destroys the immune system of a person infected with it. AIDS, or acquired immune deficiency syndrome, is the name of the condition that a person with HIV. These illnesses occurred, that is HIV and AIDS, when the person's immune system starts to become weakened by the virus. The immune system, it's like the soldiers in our body that help to protect us against diseases. There are specific cells in our body that are there to defend us from diseases. So when you contract HIV/AIDS, they target those cells or those things, machinery in your body that protect you against the disease, and then they make your defense system weak. Hence, they expose you to other diseases. So HIV, how do we get it? HIV can be transmitted through the following ways. 1, sexual intercourse with an infected person. 2, contact with the blood of an infected person. For example, by using syringes, razor blades, and anything that can cut the skin or cut any part of the body and come in contact with blood. Number 3, needles, cut with razors and other sharp objects. Signs and symptoms of HIV/AIDS. After the HIV has damaged the immune system of an infected person, he or she starts to be sick and may show the following signs and symptoms. One of them is frequent going to the toilet with diarrhea over a long period of time. So here we continue with our discussion on diseases. So the first one is AIDS or HIV/AIDS. We've discussed what it is. It's simply a breakdown of our immune system. Immune system. And we said, what are the signs and symptoms? So we have 1, frequent visiting the toilet. You're visiting the toilet, frequently. Frequent visits to toilet. That's 1. 2, rapid loss of weight. Rapid loss of weight. And number 3, you have fever. Very high fever in some instances. And number 4, you have skin diseases like warts. Your skin begins to have something like scales, Warts is a common case in this situation. Number 5, you cough a lot. Continuous coughing in some instances. So these are some of the signs and symptoms of HIV/AIDS. But let us take note, it's the fact that not all these signs and symptoms may be associated with other diseases. So if you experience some of this, don't just conclude that you have HIV/AIDS. It's possible there could be under some other underlying diseases. So these don't tell whether you have HIV/AIDS or not. So the best is to go to medical centers so that they can do laboratory tests which will determine whether you have the HIV or not. Is there any cure for HIV/AIDS? The answer to that is no. There is no cure for HIV as we are speaking today. However, there are medicines that can control the multiplication of the virus in the body of the infected person. In other words, you can slow down the HIV progression by taking some medicines. They will not cure you of the disease, but they will slow down the rate at which the AIDS disease is going to disturb you, or it will slow down the symptoms and so on. Here is a photo showing, because with HIV/AIDS, there is a lot of, concern that when people hear of the word somebody's having HIV/AIDS, we get scared and everybody wants to move away. So here is a National Black HIV Awareness Day that has been created so that we can give support to people that are suffering from the disease. The next one we want to look at is hypertension. This is a disease of the circulatory system. It affects the arteries, particularly those leading to the heart and the brain. Hypertension is sometimes referred to as high blood pressure. Hypertension is a disease of the circulatory system, especially of the heart and associated vessels of the circulatory system. It is sometimes referred to as high blood pressure. High blood pressure. In fact, that's the common way most people know hypertension. And it is becoming common in the Gambia. It causes serious health problems such as stroke and heart attack. Stroke and heart attack. Now, stroke is usually when blood vessels leading to the brain get blocked, and then the blood is not reaching the brain, and of course it's the brain that is controlling the body. So when that happens, the result is that because the brain is not receiving blood and hence is not getting nutrient or nourishment, so it's going to fail and it's not going to be able to control your body. And of course, people, when they have the attack, it can be fatal, and sometimes, of course, it's related also to heart attack in which the heart fails. You can imagine it's like a machine, like a vehicle, a car that is moving, and all of a sudden the car stops working. So when you have a heart attack, it's like a sudden situation wherein the heart stops working. It can be for a brief moment or something like that, but when it happens, of course, your heart is your machine. So if the machine stops, you also are going to suffer, in the sense nothing goes on, and you might have some serious complications. Although there are no specific or known causes for hypertension, in most instances, we are not saying these are the cause, but we link them to hypertension. We say if you're having these conditions, you're most likely going to encounter hypertension. Cigarette smoking. If you smoke, if you're a smoker, you are increasing your chance of having hypertension or heart attack or stroke. If you are overweight, obese, if you are overweight, again, you are increasing the chance of you suffering heart attack. High intake of salt. A lot of us like sweet things, so we want a lot of salt in our food. Yes, it makes the flavor of the food very nice, but we are slowly killing ourselves. So let us reduce the amount of salt we take. And finally, stress. Now, what is stress? It's just when you're faced with problems. What problems? It could be your school problems. It could be your work problems. Maybe you are worried you're going to be, retired, or you're going to lose your job, or maybe your boss is not satisfied with you, so you begin to worry about that. As young people, what are our own problems? Maybe we have problems in the home or problems with our friends, and if you begin to worry a lot about that, stress and worry are related. If you worry too much, you encounter stress, and that increases the pressure, and hence, of course, you're going to suffer from hypertension. So if we are able to control those things, things will be better. What are the signs and symptoms that somebody is suffering from hypertension? This includes, but it's not limited to that. It includes, one, frequent headaches. The victim will be having headaches, and you just don't even know why or what is happening to you, but you're having some headache. You can't explain what is wrong. Sometimes pounding of the heart is beating in an unusual way, okay, beating of heart, and you even begin to get worried. Why is my heart beating? Sometimes you have shortness of breath, okay, you begin to suffer from breathing problems whenever you do some activities like some exercise or you're doing some work. You feel weak, you also feel dizzy. When you begin to experience these things, we're not saying outright it is hypertension, but you should suspect it. And the right thing to do is you go to a doctor that will measure your blood pressure. Okay, they have this device with a very fancy name, sphygmomanometer. They will check your pressure, and then they will be able to tell you whether you are suffering from hypertension or it is something else. As we always say, it doesn't necessarily mean when you encounter these disease, symptoms that you are outrightly suffering from hypertension. What do we do to control this condition of hypertension? Simple, but very effective. Those who are overweight, okay, if you are overweight, simple thing to do is to lose weight. If you lose weight, it will help to better the condition. How do you lose weight? Reduce the amount of food that you are taking into your body, and avoid eating particularly foods that are fatty and having too much oil. And oil is a huge problem in the Gambia. There's almost hardly any food we cook without oil, and sometimes we put too much oil in our food. That is really not good for us. So fatty foods, oils, and greasy, and also sweet foods. A lot of these other foods which we need to put sugar in them. The juice we make, you drink wonjo and other things, you add a lot of sugar there. These are all adding up to you creating a situation of moving towards hypertension. So we must also reduce salt intake. Reduce the amount of salt you take, and you will be moving closer towards a healthy life situation, and you'll be avoiding a heart attack. Also, and most important, get medical advice. Don't sit and wait until you begin to get these symptoms. Regularly, you should find time, you visit your medical doctor so they can check you, and they will let you know if you are free from this condition, or if you're beginning to have them, what you do. They will also help you with the right medication. So that is very, very important. Doctor's advice and the right medication. Don't just take medicines without the doctor's advice. Some medicines we take will aggravate the situation of hypertension, so we need to be very, very careful there. Next, we want to look at diabetes. Another huge concern. I think that is number 3 on our list. Diabetes. Our medical officers usually do some talks on this condition, diabetes. It's normally, we relate it to sugar. Let's try to correct something here. Diabetes is not caused by the sugar. It is caused by the body's inability to control the level of sugar. So in some sense, Why is it related to sugar? If your body is not able to control the level of sugar and you take in too much sugar or you're not having enough sugar, then you can suffer the condition that is known as diabetes. So therefore, diabetes, which is becoming a serious concern in the Gambia, we need to look at it much more seriously. Particularly in the Gambia, the problem most people suffer here is the condition wherein there is too much sugar in the body, because the body is not able to control that sugar. Healthy people or people who don't have this condition, their bodies are able to control the amount of sugar. So even if they eat a lot of sugar, the body will control it. If they eat little sugar, the body is able to, provide the excess sugar that is normally stored in the body so that the sugar level is brought to normal. But until you do proper tests, you wouldn't know if you're suffering from it, and the result can be consequential. So what are the signs and symptoms? One, it says, you can see in the picture there, wounds. We're looking at signs and symptoms. Wounds heal rather very slowly. Normally when we have wounds or cuts, our body has a natural way of healing them very quickly. But if you're suffering from diabetes, because the body is not able to have the right amount of sugar so that it can work and heal the body, so you suffer from some of these conditions. So whenever you have a wound or a cut, it takes too long for it to heal, you should suspect diabetes. You have unusual thirst and frequent drinking of water. You thirst too quickly. You always want to drink. Desire to drink increases because you're always feeling thirsty. And the result is, when you feel the thirst, you drink. And when you drink, after a short time, you need to take out the water. And then you feel thirsty. So it becomes, a very uncomfortable situation where you always need water. And when you drink, you need to go and urinate because the body has to get rid of the excess water. You always feel general tiredness. This is another symptom. General tiredness. And also the individual, loses weight. You lose weight rather quickly, and that is very bad for you. So in more serious cases, the person with diabetes may lose consciousness, and the one we fear most, death, may follow when the situation becomes very, very serious. So, but again, let's note that all these signs we've seen may be caused by some other diseases. We need to take care of that, take note of that. So it's not, as soon as you begin to experience this, don't conclude that you have diabetes. Like we said, for all the other diseases we've looked at, hypertension, and the same thing we can say for diabetes. So instead, to find out whether you have diabetes or not, the urine of the infected person must be tested for sugar. Now, once the urine is tested, then they will be able to know if the quantity of sugar in your urine is above the normal expected to be seen. So if they test your urine, then they can know if you are suffering from disease. How do we control and prevent? How do we prevent or control diabetes? So like we said, since it's related to sugar, we have to watch the amount of sugar we take in. So one is to avoid sugary foods, reduce the amount of sugar. And some, in extreme cases, they have special type of sugar they make for people who really need to have sugar or enjoy sugar in their foods they eat, but then avoid sugar. You're on your way to avoiding diabetes. Eat correctly, okay? Eat balanced diet. Try to eat lots and lots of vegetables. So the right kinds of foods will help you a lot. And next is if we can get, insulin. This is a chemical. We refer to it as hormone. So if you have insulin, it will help your body to help control the level of sugar, because naturally this is the chemical that is produced in your body to help control the amount of sugar. But in some people, either it's produced by the pancreas, so sometimes there's something wrong with the pancreas, or the pancreas is not able to produce enough insulin. And in some instances, even when the pancreas produces the insulin, something else is wrong with the body, and the body is not able to absorb the insulin or use the insulin. So therefore, the sugar will be there in the body floating, but the person cannot make use of the insulin. And very important is for you to prevent injuries. Prevent cuts, injuries, and so on. Because like we said, the wounds, if you cut your skin or something like that, the wounds don't heal very well, or they take a very long time before they heal. So if you prevent injury, it will help to control your diabetic condition. Next disease we want to look at is cancer. This is a disease that is very much feared. Not much is known about it, so we really need to be careful about it. Cancer, and what is it? It says it's a disease in which the cells of the body multiply at an uncontrollable rate, and therefore they result in growth of lumps or tumor. Some parts of your body, you'll just see some part of your body. For example, if this is your neck, okay? If this is your neck and you begin to see something growing there, you might suspect it's cancer. Why is this happening? It is simply because the cells of your body that normally defend you, that help you to fight off disease, they begin to attack your own body. And the result you begin to see is some tumor or growth that is appear on your body. Cancer affects almost every part of the body. So therefore, if we look at the common examples or common types of cancer, we have generally cancer of the skin. So it can affect the skin, general skin. We have cancer of the breast, or simply we say breast cancer. We have cancer of the womb. And we have cancer of the prostate. And finally, we have cancer of the colon and cancer of the lungs. So if you recall the names of these parts of the body, the skin is the one that covers all our body. We normally say the largest part of the body. Of course, the breast, the ones that our mothers used to feed the babies. The womb is where babies grow in our bodies, the bodies of the female. The prostate is a special organ in male that plays a vital role in reproduction. So for males, usually this is the common cancer they experience. Colon, this refers to the gut, particularly the large intestine. So you can have cancer of that one. Of course, the lungs are the organs that help us to breathe. So what is the cure and prevention of cancer? Now, cure of cancer often requires complex surgical procedures that are expensive, and in some areas they may not even be available. So what that means is that you need to go to a hospital. The doctors will have to look at which part of the body is having the cancer, and they need to remove that part of the body. If it is a portion of your skin, maybe on your arm or your back or somewhere, they need to cut out that piece. If it is the breast, for example, if it is your right breast or the left breast, they need to remove the entire breast. And same thing applies to the womb, the prostate, the colon, the lungs. But of course, when you come to these areas, it's very critical. How can we survive without the lungs? So if it is affecting your lungs, they will remove those portions of the lung that are affected. But if the cancer has taken over a greater part of your body, it becomes very difficult to handle. So cancer can also be prevented by living good lifestyles. what are some of these lifestyles that are disturbing us? If we avoid bad lifestyles, then it will be good. So one is avoid cigarette smoking. It could lead to cancer. Number two, alcohol drinking. If you can avoid it, it's good for you. Otherwise, you need to reduce it. And number three says you delay sex. Young people must delay sex. When we engage in sex at very early age, you can have consequences that may lead to cancer because you're inexperienced, you don't know all the dangers associated in engaging in sex, and you might expose yourself to diseases that might result in cancer. If you eventually get married, it is advisable you stick to one partner. Don't have multiple partners. It will help to reduce your chances of developing cancer. Next is gonorrhea and syphilis. They're similar, but of course they are very different. So gonorrhea, the spelling is a little bit interesting. Some will say Gonorrhea. Some don't put the O there in some instances. So we're looking at gonorrhea and syphilis. Syphilis. Okay, let us take note that these are STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. Of course, in addition to that is HIV. What are the symptoms? For gonorrhea, you have a discharge. You have something coming from the genitals. And when you want to urinate, it becomes very painful, very, very painful. So whenever you experience that, you can suspect gonorrhea. You go for test, and then doctors will take swab, or they will take samples from your genitals, and this will be viewed under the microscope, and if the bacteria that causes the disease is found there, then they can ascertain you have the disease. If not, they will look for other things. But if it is not cured, later in life, it can lead to sterility. So let's look at the symptoms. Remember, the symptoms are the ones that tell you and the doctor that something is wrong. So we said the symptoms include pus, discharge, or discharge of pus. Pus discharge, that means pus coming out of the body. Pus is, like if you have boils on your skin, and when the boil is mature, and when you squeeze it out, that yellow something that comes out, that's pus. So if you observe that coming from any of your genitals, you may want to suspect gonorrhea, and especially if you have engaged in sex. In later cases, we are saying you may develop sterility. What is that? It means you become infertile. You're unable to have children. We're not saying it's the only cause, but some other things may cause that one. But if you have that gonorrhea and it is not taken care of, it might result in sterility. And also your urethra, this is where urine comes out of your body, could be blocked. And when it is blocked, of course, that's when you find it very painful to pass out urine. What about syphilis? What are the symptoms? For syphilis, you would have sore, okay? Let me come to that. Syphilis, hopefully, if you are taking notes, you've taken this one. For syphilis, the symptoms include sore on the skin, and of course, the skin of the genitals we are referring to. You, like gonorrhea, you would also be discharging pus and painful urination. The symptoms later on in life would also include sterility, heart disease. This is where it is very dangerous. It also, not just sterility, inability to have babies, but it can also result to heart disease, including the ones we mentioned just now, hypertension and so on. And in extreme cases, it might result in madness, because the disease, once it gets into your blood system, it finds its way all the way to your brain, and then it can cause madness. And of course, you can have cancer. So these are very dangerous conditions. So how is it transmitted? Largely, it is through sex. So the transmission, or how do you get syphilis and gonorrhea, is largely through sexual contact. So how do we prevent, for both of them, how do we prevent them? Since they are sex related, one, you make sure you have what we call safe sex. Safe sex. Use condoms. Make sure you know the conditions of partners, especially if you are not in a married relationship. If you must have sex, it must be with people whose health conditions you actually know. It says you avoid promiscuous sex. That means having sex with multiple partners, or having sex with so many different people. That can be very dangerous and risky. So the final one is that if we use antibiotics properly, proper use of antibiotics will help a lot in getting a treatment for gonorrhea and syphilis. So let's understand, they are similar, but they are equally very, very different. Now, gonorrhea normally affects the urethra, the tube wherein urine passes. And of course, like we said, pus will build up. That makes it difficult for you to pass pus. And the same thing, but when you come to syphilis, you experience sore on the skin of the genitals. So, but in terms of the symptoms, that is it. But in terms of what to do to take care of them, since they are sex related, the most important practice is safe sex. Use condoms, or we can say at this age, the safest you can do is avoid sex. You wait until you get married, and of course, if where possible, both partners get tested, and if everybody is free of the disease, then you're fine. So, some questions now. It says, pathogens causing STDs gain access into the body through the skin, nostrils, genital organs, buccal cavity. Let me rub the board while you think about your answers. If you choose A, the skin, that is wrong. If you chose B, the nostrils, that is wrong. And if you chose D, buccal cavity, that is also wrong. The correct answer there should be genital organs. Pathogens causing STDs gain access into the body through the genital organs. Cholera, this is caused by bacterium, and we get it through contaminated drink and food. Contaminated drink and food. This is how it is transmitted. So transmission, or how is it passed from a sick person to a healthy person? It is when the germ that is causing the disease, when it gets into food or drink, and you take that into your body, you will have the disease. Or what are the symptoms? They include watery stools. Symptoms include watery stool, that is feces. Feces normally should be soft, solid, but if they are watery, it means the body is trying to get rid of them because they are already in a disease form. And most important is that this stool, when you experience that it has foul smell, that is a clear indication that you are suffering from cholera. Vomiting is another symptom. And dehydration, because you're losing a lot of water, so you suffer from dehydration. And finally, which is very scary, you die if you're not treated. It's a very complicated disease because when you have it, you might think, oh, I just have diarrhea and this and that. But before you know, especially when you suffer from dehydration and vomiting, you're losing a lot of water, then this brings in very complicated conditions in your body that might lead to death. So how do we prevent cholera? Since we said we get them through food and drink, so the most important thing is to make sure they are safe, sterilized drinks. Food must be clean. Make sure food must be clean. The containers in which we put the food must be clean. The people preparing the food, the environment, everything related to the food must be very clean so that we can reduce the chance of picking up the germs that cause cholera. Sewage disposal, very important. Sewage refers to the feces, urine, and all wastewater that we remove from our homes. So if these things are not disposed of correctly, they might be containing the germs that will now contaminate our food and drink. And of course, if those get into our body, it becomes a problem. Regular washing of hands. We cannot overemphasize that. Wash hands regularly, especially before touching food and drink. And of course, when you come from toilets, we need to clean our hands. And people that are suspected or confirmed cases of cholera, they must be isolated. Keep them so that they are not in contact with people that are already healthy and pass on the disease. And of course, especially for children, vaccination helps a lot to keep the disease under control. So that ends our discussion on the diseases. Here are the key points from last or the previous lesson and in addition to this one. Number one says, good health is very important for us to be able to carry out our daily activities. And we all have the right to clean and safe environment. Number three, we all have corresponding responsibilities to keep ourselves and our environment clean and safe. And number four, our personal behavior, attitude, and actions have direct effect on community and of course vice versa. We must take care to avoid conditions which will encourage multiplication and spread of disease-causing organisms. A disease simply refers to the illness of the body, feeling sick. Number seven, we said diseases can be categorized as communicable or non-communicable. We define communicable diseases as those that we can spread from one person to another person. And number nine, non-communicable diseases, we said, are those that cannot be transferred from person to person. It is our right to have medical and health facilities, but it is our responsibility to protect ourselves from diseases. So these are the major points. In the last page here, we've listed all of them. So let us take very good care of ourselves, especially in these trying times wherein everybody is aware and everybody is talking about coronavirus. Let's not just talk about it, but let us put it into practice. Listen to what the doctors or the medical people are saying. Keep yourself safe. Reduce contact with people. Wash your hands properly. And that way we can keep the disease at a minimum. You may want to try these review questions. One, it's asking about what is meant by personal health. Number two, what is meant by community health. Number three, how is community health different from personal health? Number four, why do we need to keep our surroundings and public places clean? Number five, how can you as an individual carry out your responsibility in keeping your community clean? 6, Make a list of all the community health concerns in your community. Number 7, you have the right to clean and safe environment. Now, what category of human rights is this? Is it A, civil and political right, or B, social and economic right? Number 8, what is a disease? And finally, number 9, disease can be grouped into 2 main groups. So briefly name and explain each of the 2 groups. 10, syphilis belongs to which category of disease? A, that is A, number 10A. Number 10B, what causes syphilis? How is it spread? How can you cure and prevent its spread? And E, how is it different from gonorrhea? Number 11, what is hypertension, or what has hypertension, diabetes, and cancer have in common? What do these 3 diseases have in common? Hypertension, diabetes, and cancer. And finally, number 12, what causes diabetes? How can you prevent or avoid it? I'll also want to refer you to past papers. Try as much as possible, especially those in the examination class, to get past papers. Look for questions relating to health and hygiene, and you try to answer them. If you check the website of the Gambia Education, they have an email there. If you answer your questions, you can send them there and we'll check them through. If they are okay, fine. If there are areas you need more help, we will respond to you and make corrections. So please don't forget past papers. Look for questions relating to this area. That is all for today. I thank you very much for your time. My name is Mr. Quraish.